Salutations team, welcome back. In this video we're going to be talking about for each loops. Okay, so what this is, a for each loop is, I should have block comment here, a for each loop is an alternative to a traditional for loop. If you are going through a loop forwards in order. So if you just want to do something, everything in the loop, you can use a for each loop. Now I'm going to teach you this today, and this is something I want you to practice. This is never something you need to do in your code. What it is it's just like a clean way to look at all elements in a list slash array. It's just a clean way to access individual elements. What it does that's kind of interesting is it doesn't actually store a location I. So there is no way to do that and see that location as you go through. So you can't compare adjacent elements or remove things or anything that needs the location I. And we'll show what I'm talking about here. But okay, so let's look at this. So basically what you have is you have like the variable actually stores each entry of the array or array list. All right, so let's say you have this array list of names that I've set up. It just says Al, James, and Bob. And let's say that you want to loop through and print out each individual element. Now, obviously, you can print out the whole list, but let's pretend you can't. Now, if you want to do a traditional for loop, it looks like this, right? You just do for int I equals 0, I is less than names.size. You do a little I++ number there. And then you just go ahead and print out system.out.println names.getI. All right, right, and that'll go ahead and print out each of these names. I think there's some other crap above this, but they each go ahead and print out there. Cool. Now I want to show you how you can loop through and print out each element with a for each loop. Now the setup of this is going to look a little different. We're going to talk about this. So you're going to set it up like this. For, and now you have the type of variable in the loop. So you have like variable type. So for each string, and you can call it whatever you want, and then just you give it some random name. And then you have a colon, not a semicolon, but a colon. That colon means in. And then you have the name of the loop, or the name of the list. So we're going through names. So what this means is this is for variable type, random name. So you have an array list of strings. And it looks like this. For each, the way you want to read this in English is for each string s in the list called names. So what it's going to do is it's going to loop through it every time through. It's going to set s to be each string in order as you go through the list. So the first time through, s equals Al. And then you set s to equal James. And then you set s to equal Bob. So in order, it's going to go through and say, okay, s is the first one, then s is the second one, then s is the second one, the third one. So the cool part about this is, notice there's no I. There's no count variable I. You do not have to call .get. S is automatically each of the individual entries in there. So you can just go ahead and print out system.out.println s. I don't need to call .get. S is each individual string. And as I loop through, this is still going to go ahead and print each individual string as you go. So it does the exact same thing. So this is a cleaner, more concise way to loop through a list like this. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do. Let me show you how you can do it with some other things. Like this also works for an array of any type. So let's say we set up just a new array of doubles. Let's call it nums equals a new array of, let's say, 4 doubles. Okay, and what did I do here? Oh, I already have a nums. We'll call it numbos. And then I'm going to set up like numbos sub 0 to equal 23.1. Okay, and then let's just go through and, okay, we have 1, 2, 3. So we'll set up spot 1, spot 2, spot 3. Let's make one of them negative. Let's make one of them 3.1, and let's do one of them something totally different. Okay, so the way you can loop through this is following the same type. You do for whatever variable type is. It's an array of doubles. So we're going to say for each double, and we'll call it whatever we want. Let's call it, well, let's not call it that, but for each double entry. And again, that's just a variable name. You call it whatever you want. So for each double entry inside numbers, then what that's going to do is that's going to go ahead and entry is 23.1, entry is negative 23.1, entry is 3.1, entry is 5.4. So you can go ahead and again, like let's say we want to multiply each number by 2 and print out that version. So I'm going to print out, 46.2, negative 46.2, 6.2, and then 10.8. So I could just print out entry times 2. So again, I don't need to call bracket I. This just says for each double that I'm going to call entry inside my list, I'm going to say entry to be this, then entry to be this, then entry to be this, then entry to be this. I don't need to access it. It automatically loops through and looks at each individual element. And again, this works for arrays or array lists and does exactly what we'd expect in a nice way. Okay, so that's kind of nice, right? It's just a way you can access things quickly. One thing worth noting is this did not actually change numbers. So even though I'm like changing entries, even if I do like entry equals entry times 2, if I try and like print out something from this, let's actually do this, right? Let's set like entry to be what it was before times 2. If I print out like number sub 0, we're going to see it's unchanged because I actually did change something different there. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and run this and we'll see again that numbers is unchanged. Only the entry got changed. So it comes up with a new variable and it just sets that new variable entry to be each element one by one. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to, I guess 2 more things I wanted to do. Let's say you have an array list of some other types. I think I have our old date class here. So there's our date class with a month, day, year. So if I set up some dates, so let's say I make an array list of dates called my calendar equals, equals a new array list of dates. And then I'll add some stuff to that, right? So I'll do calendar.add. I need to add new date objects. I need to call dates constructor. There's literally no significance to that date. I don't know where I thought of that. Hopefully it's not one of your birthdays. And then let's add in, say, I don't know, Christmas of this year, if that even happens. So that'll be your calendar. And then if you want to loop through this, let's say you want to loop through and say call the next day method on each one, well, here's what it is. It is a list of date objects. So what I say is for each date, and I'll call that D in the list calendar. So for each date D in calendar, and then I'll do, I can do D dot next day. Or I could call whatever method I want, right? I'm just keeping this simple to show you the structure of the for loop. But again, there's no need to call .get. I just call the method directly on that. So D, first off, is set to basically this like sets D to equal calendar.get0, then D equals, then it sets D to equal calendar.get1, and then so forth as you continue through the loop. It just sets D to be each object kind of in order. All right, so that's how for each loops work for the most part. Again, this is not something you need to write in any of your code, but it can save you some time. I like to do it sometimes just because it's clean and fast. And a lot of times you'll see people's code that's written with this, so I want you to make sure you understand it. One thing you also might be curious about is what about a 2D array? Our old friend, how do we do that? So let's take a look at this. So let's set up a 2D array. So big boy, let's say, is a new int with, let's say, 3 rows and 4 columns. Okay, so just like with a traditional for loop, you need one for each loop to look at each row. So a 2D array is an array of arrays. So you want to look at each row in that array. So each row is a 1D array. So you're going to say for each 1D array called row in the big boy. And then when I want to look at that, so basically it sets big boy, not big boy, so it sets row to equal, big boy sub 0, which is row 0. And then it sets it to be big boy sub 1, which is row 1, and so forth. And then once you have that, now within that row, called row, which is an array of ints itself, I need to look at each int in that row. So that'll look like this. That'll be for each int, let's call it C, inside row. And then I could, do whatever I want with C, right? I could print out like C plus 2 or C plus 3 or something. So again, we have one loop say, okay, for each row in the 2D array, and then for each individual number within that row. Just like normally, right? We loop through all the rows, and then within that row, I loop through each of the columns, the same structure here. I did want to show you one quick thing. Unfortunately, for each loops, although they are beautiful and cute and elegant, they do not help with the removal issue, and in fact, you can't even remove without a runtime error. So let me show you, let's suppose we had this array of strings. And if we tried to loop through that, like if you just tried to remove something from there, like if you do, names.remove s, like say you just want to remove every element or whatever, you're going to see this gives you a runtime error when you go to run your code. It gives you a concurrent modification exception. And basically it's saying, bruh, you're trying to go through this list, but you're trying to change the list as you go through. That's bunk. Don't do that. So it won't let you do that. It gives you a runtime error every time, so don't even try. You'll just upset yourself. But I think if you just need to loop through and look at each individual element, a for each loop could be a really helpful way to do that. It works with arrays, it works with array lists, and it works for any type of variable as well. So any type of variable. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in class. Please bring me some questions.